very good evening and a warm welcome to all our viewers. As India celebrates its first ever National Space Day, this day probably was not going to be possible if history was not created exactly about a year ago. 23rd August 2023. That's when India created history. ISRO created history by landing on the surface of the moon. Joining me today is Dr. S. Somanath, Chairman of ISRO. Sir, you've of course been the brain behind Chandrayaan-3 and of course the success of various other space programs in the country, and more importantly, you put India on the global space map today. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And as India celebrates, National Space Day, what do you think is the importance of the day overall for the entire fraternity, the aerospace fraternity in the country, the youth, the scientists, and more importantly, every Indian?
See, this landing on the moon has been an enigma for many. Starting from the space age, the fierce competition that erupted early 60s to reach moon and then land human on the moon. Now that story is well behind us. Over a period of time, the interest on the moon came down across nations. But then there is a new interest in going to moon. Every nation is trying to make it a point to reach moon, and that's why you have been seeing many missions happening in the recent times. The Russians, the Americans, the Japanese, the Chinese, all of them were sending moon, not human beings, they are robotic missions. So in that context, the mission of India going to moon, in the renewed interest of going to moon, becomes significant. And for us, the significance came because that we were the first to land on the southern side of the moon, which is considered to be more scientifically of greater interest. So, and we were the first to do that. And we were the fourth to be on the moon on a robotic lander. So, and also it came on a time then we were landing. There were other missions all trying to go along with us to go to moon and land, and many of them were struggling. So, in that context, leaving behind our experience of 2019, not able to land softly, the event on 23rd August 2023 became an historic event for all of us. And you said the significance in many sectors, the importance and significance of this will be felt. First and foremost in the minds of young people, students, researchers, and for them it's a confidence giver on the might of India to develop such a capability, do it on our own will, do it from India based on technologies that were developed in India. Second, it gives every Indian a pride of being an Indian craft, reaching the moon and putting our flag on that. Absolutely. That gives you a second, a pride. Looking at the scientific goals and accomplishment in that, it has been historical that the Chandrayaan-1 was the craft that identified presence of water on the moon, even after so many years of exploration of the moon. And it was the remote sensing instrument on the Chandrayaan-1, an American instrument as well as an Indian instrument, found out the traces of water, later corroborated by further findings. Now Chandrayaan-3 is going to do that. But even Chandrayaan-2, the OHRC camera was one of the highest resolution images ever produced on the moon, which was used by other agencies now.
And the orbiter was functional for such a long time.
Such a long time, yes. And Chandrayaan-3, of course, found out many of the scientific findings. Yesterday, one of the important findings came.
I was just going to come to that because it's been a year. I'm sure, all this while we've been talking about just the landing, but after the landing, a host of experiments have been conducted by ISRO.
Yeah.
Take us through this latest finding and how interesting is it?
No, there are many in the pipeline to come out in the reputed journals and newspapers. So, what I can tell today.
So before that comes out, I'm sure you can tell our viewers or give us a sneak peek.
I can't tell because it is it's more of a scientific work which requires peer review, evaluation. It's not right to make tall claims at this moment because it needs to be calibrated against other findings happened elsewhere.
Okay.
So that's why a scientific finding becomes significant when it is evaluated by people of competence across the globe and say yes, it's a new finding.
India is the first country to get this sort of
got sort of such an idea because we were able to do measurements at multiple locations. Possibly this was never done before. That's
very interesting. And talking about Chandrayaan-3, we should also talk about the future of Chandrayaan as well. I've just been informed that 4 and 5, Chandrayaan 4 and 5, the design is almost ready. So what's the plan for 4 and 5? Because you already have Gaganyaan where you plan to, of course, put an Indian into space. Does Gaganyaan 4 and 5 somewhere envisage putting Indian on the moon? Is there a plan?
No, the trajectory to place an Indian on the moon is very arduous one. It has many paths that we need to put the dots, link all of them, and then we'll reach the moon. The first and foremost is you must continue to go to moon. See, the one mission that we did on landing is only the beginning, and we need to learn how to bring back that craft back to Earth. We did something in Chandrayaan-3, just lifting off, bringing back the orbiter back to Earth orbit. Some of the initial studies were done, but going there, landing, then taking off using a propulsive assist device, and then come back to Earth, return to Earth, and then collect the sample. It's next order of things. So this is first step, but this will be done in a scaled version. That's what we call Chandrayaan-4. But then your question of taking human to moon and landing is now targeted by 2040.
2040.
40. Okay. It's a pretty long time in the scale of the work that we need to do, but it's not that much of time really we have to understand, because we have so much of capability yet to be developed. The first and foremost, the human spaceflight capability on Gaganyaan is yet to happen. So we have to first send the human to space, bring them back safely, take them again and again, build up a space station, then send human beings for experiments for long duration stay, develop a higher capacity rocket to take human beings up to moon, because the current rockets are not capable of doing it. It's just hardly 4 tons. If you have to send human beings to moon, you need to lift 100 tons. Yeah. So we need to develop rockets of that caliber. We need to develop a space station to operate on a continuous basis. We need to create a ground infrastructure to operate such infrastructure over long periods of time. So the capacity development has to happen in a calibrated manner over a period of time.
But the vision is there.
Of course, the vision is there, but we need to work on it, invest on it for a long period of time.
Absolutely, and I'm sure with people who have the vision like you do, and to take it forward, that day is not far away, and probably a deadline that you set, we could even see it happening much earlier.
We must target 2040 is definitely a date within the 100th year of our independence. That's why we set 2040. So I am hopeful that we will be able to do that.
So talking about man on the moon, but like you said, Gaganyaan is the next plan. So where is that? If you could give us the latest update on Gaganyaan at this point in time. We believe very soon there's going to be an unmanned spacecraft that's going to go and do a trial run of sorts, which the manned aircraft is going to do. Tell us about the timeline and where the stage right now is.
See, of course, in the Gaganyaan program, we have been little slow in the past. I must admit that the technology development program was going on. The first of the thrust was on the rocket side, because rocket need to be much more reliable. We call it human rating. So a lot of tests happened on the stages of the LVM3 to convert it to human rated, and the entire process is now completed. The rocket in the final stage of flight has now been realized and brought to Sriharikota launch complex. So it is there now. Now second element is the crew module, where the crew has to enter. But this development is taking time, because the technology to make such a piece of engineering to do it in India is not there.
So this is completely being done indigenously.
We originally thought that we can do it outside, and we tried in many ways to get it done outside, where there is some experience of doing it, but nothing materialized due to many reasons: technological, contractual, cost, and many other things prevented us from doing such a thing. Finally, we had decided to do it here using the homegrown knowledge and technology, which has taken a little longer time. But then
at the end of it becomes indigenous.
It becomes indigenous, and we are going to get it from industry now. Then that part is one. Second is there is something complex elements in it, which is called the crew module, electronics, crew module propulsion, and service module, environmental control, and life support system. They are under different levels of development. In the first flight, of course, human being is not going to go, so everything is not needed, especially the oxygen supply, water supply, food supply is not needed, and waste management is not needed. So we are going to put a robot. So that robot is under development, and it has now reached the flight.
What will this robot be capable of doing?
It can interact with us with the audio manner. It can also do some functions like keys and switches and controls and replacement of some valves, opening some valves, things like that, which is needed for experiment. But more importantly, it will measure, suppose a human is inside, what type of environment that will feel, temperature, pressure, the vibration, shock, everything it will measure. So that will give an idea about a person actually going, how he will feel it about it. So it will be fully instrumented. Then there are other items called crew escape system. You would have seen that we had done a launch of that part, and we proved that it is already there. But that's only one mission. So we have to do one more before we actually do the unmanned mission. So that's also getting ready. So the flight item is almost realized now. And lastly, there is another critical item called the integrated vehicle health management system, which actually is a computer of complex nature, which will monitor the rocket while it flies and checks whether everything is in order where all parameters are correct, is there any failure going to happen? Not after failure it will say it has failed, but prior to failure it must look at the entire health of it and say that there is an imminent danger, and if that danger is seen, you abort, save the crew. So this has to happen in less than few milliseconds of time. So that is also developed. The flight item is undergoing simulation and test. So all of this will come together at Sriharikota in another few months of time, and we are hoping that by December we should be able to integrate everything.
When you're talking about this robot, I'm sure even the viewers would want to know, where is this being developed? Is it something that's being developed at ISRO itself? And what will be the capabilities? How big will this be? Will this replicate the size of a human? Tell us a little more about that. How many will be there? Whether it will be just one, because when you have the Gaganyaan mission, how many pilots do you plan to actually send? Will that robot replicate the same weight or the number in terms of proportion?
It is developed within ISRO only.
Okay.
All of these are done here. It is all the actuators, drives, its language processing, computers, everything done here. It doesn't replicate a full human being. It will replicate only the upper part of the human being, almost to the size, actual size of a lady. Okay, so it is Vyomitra. So, but it can lay down and come up. So you will feel that it also is up there sitting. But the rest of the portions are not there. It's not allowed to move. Then it has two hands with fingers, so it can operate.
Okay.
So, but it will be in constrained condition during launch.
This will be remotely controlled, or will it have, somewhere can it function on its own as well?
If you say voice command, it will function.
Okay.
So that means it cannot function on its own, because right now it doesn't have the intelligence of a human being. It will be commanded to do certain functions. So that is one. Second, you asked about the whether how many people are going to be there when it flies. So currently we are designing it for 2 persons to travel. So there will be 2 seats right now. It can be increased to 3 later, but right now only 2. And in the 2, one of them will be occupied by this Vyomitra, and another seat will be occupied by the environmental control life support system for testing purpose.
So when we're talking about Gaganyaan, another thing that we definitely need to talk about is Axiom 4, because India is gearing up for that. When you have countries like Hungary and Poland, which are also of course going to be a part of this, do you feel how much, while I'm going to get into the specifics of the pilots going there and the training, but before that, I want you to tell us, India reaching this stage in aerospace sector, landing on the moon and the other missions and the projects that we've carried out in the recent past, has that had a bearing on India being selected and being made a part of this Indo-US mission of sorts?
I don't think so. It has.
Are we being taken more seriously in the aerospace?
No, there are different things happening. You must realize what's happening across the world. There are geopolitical issues, the growth of India as a technology power. Earlier, we were not considered to be a top in the space. Now, everybody in the West also looking at India with great respect and hope, and considering us as a frugal, engineering nation. But more than that, and I believe it is more of the geopolitical alignment that has taken place. India taken stands which are very, very important, in which we want to cooperate with everyone in the science and technology field. We don't take any sides, so we have equally good cooperation with most of the spacefaring nations. Even if they do not cooperate, it doesn't matter. So that creates a space for us to work with all of them. We work with the Japanese, we work with the Russians, the Americans, and all of them are keen to look at how we can be a part of that journey. So that's why there are projects working with all of them. We are working on NASA in ISRO synthetic aperture radar. We are working with the French on satellite called Trishna. We are working with the Russians for crew training and other programs. So there is an increased interest in all the science and technology field in most of these nations. And I believe this is a result of that.
Absolutely. And now coming to this mission itself, an Indian astronaut going to the International Space Station. A lot of people are very curious. Firstly, tell us, the selection process that has happened now, because I believe there are 2 people who have finalized, one who is going to be, of course, on board and the other as a backup. Why were these 2, officers of the Indian Air Force chosen? And tell us a little bit about the training program that they've gone through.
No, all of them are the very competent people. All 4 came from Air Force Test Pilot Squadron. So there is no really difference between any of the 4 in terms of their capability to go to ISS, which is not the purpose for which they were selected. They were selected for the Gaganyaan mission, finally, and anyone else can go to Gaganyaan. Any of the 4 can go. So what we made sure is at least one of the 4 only can go for the International Space Station mission, and we need to put the one which will get through the process at ISS and bring back knowledge to us. That's the purpose of this. So we have selected somebody who will be most suited for that function.
Now, when you talk about being on the International Space Station, carrying out this project, why I asked you the kind of training that they've gone through is because I'm sure each individual human body reacts in a different manner to the kind of training that it needs to be in space. So what were the kind of trainings that ISRO put them through, and now what is the kind of training that NASA is putting them through, or any other space agency?
See, we do not have an astronaut training facility till now of the class that whether Russia is having or America is having. We are yet to build, and we are slowly building them. Okay, they have some of the finest of the system which they have developed for last 30-40 years, maybe more. Yeah. Now, they have gone through the training in Star City, in the Russian training facility, but they have no exposure to the American training program yet. So this could be different, but there are people, astronauts, who have gone through both the training. Okay, those who have flown in ISS have gone through training in Russia as well as in America. So such people are there, and we have discussed with them also. So it gives an very good opportunity for an astronaut to understand this training.
This information that the pilots will gather and ISRO will gather, is there going to be any sort of intel sharing on Axiom 4? Because that will be used for Gaganyaan, isn't it?
See, there is no intel sharing here. There is called experience sharing. For example, they will feel certain type of comfort level, the controls, the environment, the way in which they will sit, the tying them down, the air and the comfort levels. Then the way they will do some experiments, the communication protocols, the preparation for all of this.
In all likelihood, the pilot who will of course go on the International Space Station will also be a part of the Gaganyaan program.
They are not only the part of the Gaganyaan, but they are the ones.
I'm saying, will the same pilot be a part of the Gaganyaan
that's what I said. That all the 4 will be considered finally for the Gaganyaan program, and I am not sure that who will fly finally, but all of them are considered equally.
As far as experiments that India wants to conduct on the International Space Station, is there anything specific that ISRO is looking at, sir?
Yeah, we have already tied up with the US side, on the ISS side. What are the experiments possible there? Because it's not possible to take so many experiments there. There are only limited experiments. So we are working with them, curating with those co-astronauts on what all experiments our person will be participating. But the role of the Indian astronaut going in the Axiom mission is the pilot. So it's not a mission specialist.
Correct.
The mission specialists are designed to do experiments, whereas a pilot is supposed to do the flight. So he is assigned as not the commander but the pilot. So the pilot will get training in domains like docking, the craft with the ISS, and also the controls and the interaction between human being and the machine. So this is precisely something that we are looking for.
Now, coming to the International Space Station and the news around that, Sunita Williams, still a lot of time or no clarity on the return. How do you look at this situation right now, which is now stretching for months and probably could take more time? And does this make you apprehensive in any way, considering our Indian pilot is also going to embark on a mission like this?
Of course, like in any space program, whenever you encounter problems of this nature, everybody is concerned. So that doesn't mean that we do not have a solution, or that we are not taking actions to take care of it.